Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Dolce.
Great to be here again. Hello, Matthew.
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
We have an amazing episode tonight that I want to get to pretty quickly. So it's about a guy who was in the federal penitentiary, who was busted for cannabis growing many years ago, and today he runs one of the largest cannabis companies in California. And it's a great cannabis company also.
From running from the law
to running an enormous operation in California and now lobbying in Sacramento.
Yeah, it's so wild. And not actively having to lobby because they come to him.
They want him.
They want his advice. They want his input.
But before we get to him, let's do some news, huh? Because some interesting things happened this week.
So as a New York City resident, we just passed our weekend cannabis celebration, march, and parade. I don't even know.
Whatever that was, I
maybe
don't
you
know.
have a better way to describe that. But it did feature somebody that we've talked about on the show before. On one of the main speaking stages was Cynthia Nixon, who again, now has doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the plan to legalize cannabis, and said something on stage to that audience that I found very interesting.
You mean the fact that she was willing to expunge former criminals' criminal records?
Well, that too, but I think that should be pretty standard. I think that if we're going to go ahead and say that that cannabis is not a problem, then if you've been busted for carrying pot, that should obviously go away.
Agree.
More than that, she said something to the effect of legalization can and should be treated as a form of reparations.
The right idea. I agree.
For people who have been incarcerated for cannabis. And the way that she had discussed going about doing it is that if her campaign should succeed and she does become governor, she will look at a way to give convicted cannabis criminals first access to licensing in the legal business.
It's even more progressive than California, so that's a very interesting position.
What's your take on that, though, Joe? Do you think that we're going to see an interest in... I mean, what are we talking about
Well, first of all, I think it's a risky and weird promise. I mean, first of all, we don't know who those people are. So why they get first preference is a question to be asked, I think. I really do. I mean, I've known a lot of people who were operating in the black market who were righteous people, and then I know a lot of people who are operating in the black market who were a little less than righteous. Okay,
sure, and that's very chicken and egg, right? Maybe they had to be that way because of the market. Maybe the market made them that way. It's hard to, but I assume that what we're talking about that is the most likely path is people who are in distribution, right? In New York, we have bicycle delivery services. You can call a guy and he comes to your house. Yeah. I imagine what we're talking about is finding ways to legitimize these as business people.
Possibly. I just don't know. I don't know any of the specifics about it. I doubt she knows. I doubt it's in New York. It's going to be very difficult because it costs about $7 million to win a dispensary license. Okay, so I think there's a lot of questions here. Let's not get too into it. If Cynthia will come on the show, we could ask her in person.
Yeah, let's work. Continue to work together. Speaking of the expensive dispensary, I was over by MedMen.
How'd you like it?
We didn't go inside. Had no interest. Obviously, you'd look in. And it looks like an Apple store from the outside. It's on 5th Avenue here in Manhattan. It literally looks like an Apple store because as far as your eyes can see, there's no cannabis to be found.
There is no cannabis in New York City. There's no flower, remember? It's all, New York State is just all tincture and capsules.
I didn't even see tincture and capsules.
There's a reason this program isn't very effective.
Yeah, what I saw in the MedMen facility was stations of iPads that you could go to your iPad. They had uniformed employees that would come over. You scroll through with the information and you get your order. They require you to show your card. They were very forthcoming about information on how to get a card, which I found interesting.
As they should be.
As they should be, but I also thought, New York, you have to go to a licensed doctor, but apparently there's easy phone conversations.
Not very hard. You can go to Hello MD. Remember we had Pamela on the show?
Yeah, really.
You can do telemedicine in New York, yes, but yes, you can do lots of different things now. It's not that hard to get the card. The problem is once you got the card, there isn't that much to get.
Yeah,
and it's also very expensive. A bottle of tincture is $90. It's twice what it costs on the black market. So New York has a long way to go.
Yeah, definitely. Second big piece of news is actually talking about what we do, which is journalism inside of the world of cannabis. We are losing a beacon of information as it currently sits. Denver Post is defunding and shutting down their support for the Cannabist.
Which is a real shame. I mean, it was, I think, the country's best report on what was going on in that state and basically around the country.
Absolutely.
But this is not specifically aimed at the cannabis. The Denver Post is cutting back all sorts of other things.
Sure. Apparently, they've recently been acquired by a team of venture capitalists who are just gutting all the money.
They'll just gut the paper. But I heard that Ricardo Baca, who was the founding editor of the Cannabist, is trying to raise some capital to start it again, right?
He has put the word out that he is interested in purchasing from the Post and from this venture capitalist group, the Cannabist. The website is still up and active. I don't know that they're currently putting out any new material, but old material is there. And hopefully Ricardo can close the deal and fire it back up.
It would be great.
There's a great in-depth interview with Baca on the Mary Jane. If you're familiar with that website, you can go there. Great interview. He goes into depth about some of his favorite cannabis journalism. But yeah, a lot of great stuff out there. So I encourage people to visit themaryjane.com. And if you can find a way, support the Cannabist. Every episode of the Brave New Weed podcast is archived and available to you for free at any time. All you have to do is go over to bravenewweed.com/podcast and you will find episodes ranging from how to dose for pain and anxiety to how to have a good time with a cocktail.
Dennis Hunter started life in Northern California, and he was the son of a family of growers and really walked into the industry and graduated into the industry as a young man and was very successful. And then the war on drugs got him, and he ended up in federal penitentiary for far too many years. Once out, though, he discovered that his love of the plant hadn't stopped. And law be damned, he went back and he managed to start a company that has since become one of the largest cannabis companies in California. It's called CannaCraft. They make some amazing products. They make Care by Design CBD oils with a little bit of tincture of with a little bit of THC in it. They also make my favorite chocolates, Satori, which come in microdoses of THC, which are also delicious. So I'm really happy that he's on the show tonight, and he's going to talk to us about his story and what it's really like to go from running from the law to running a company. Dennis, I'm really happy to have you here tonight. Thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
That's great, from California. So I want to talk about the history that you've lived through and how it sort of parallels the history of cannabis in the United States in some ways, some very fundamental ways that a lot of people aren't aware of. So tell me, you were born in Humboldt County?
Yeah, I was born in Humboldt County.
The Emerald Triangle.
Yes.
And were your parents growers?
No, not at all.
Were they in the business at all?
Nope. They're trucking company and self-storage business.
And did you start to grow cannabis as a young man? How did you get in?
Yeah, I was born in Humboldt, but then I moved down probably at 12 years old to Willits in Mendocino County, which is also in the Emerald Triangle. And when I was in high school, I had friends and their parents were growers. And so I ended up going to their houses, seeing their lifestyle. And it was just a really happy place. And they were just really super creative people. And I could really see a difference between, that cannabis user and an alcohol user, where I'd be at other friends' houses and their dad was an alcoholic, and it was really a negative situation. And so I kind of fell in love with the plant early on, just seeing the people that were around it.
So going to your friends for milk and cookies wasn't exactly the same as just getting Oreos. Is that correct?
Yeah, not so much.
No, that's always intrigued me, because it was for a long time like a very family-run enterprise in Humboldt County, right? It's way up, for people that don't know, it's way up in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
The roads were logging roads. I mean, the reason people went there is because it was hard to get access, right?
Yeah, I think probably in the 70s, the people were moving up there just to get away from the city and have these grows where they didn't get bothered. bothered.
And away from the feds.
And away from the feds, away from the police, and kind of created this sustainable living out in the hills where you didn't have power off the grid.
You were off the grid, really, right?
Where a lot of the solar energy came from. That Willits was the solar capital of the world at one point. I think John Schaefer with Real Goods started it, but really his only customers were cannabis growers because they're the only ones that could afford solar panels.
So tell us about your rise, as it were, as a grower. What happened? You started growing.
Yeah, I started growing. It was just a fun thing to do with friends and, make a little extra money. And my dad was a kind of jack of all trades, and he just had me doing everything. So I knew how to do plumbing, electrical, building, mechanical. And so when I started growing, it just seemed so easy. And so it was very easy for me to expand and go bigger. And so. How
big did you get?
Well, from Willits, I went down for college for a few years, but I started growing bigger and had an indoor going, and then I had another place in Mendocino County where we had about 3,000 plants, some greenhouses, outdoor, and we got busted at one point.
What year was that?
That was in 1992.
And what happened in 1992?
We had the sheriffs roll in one day. They were actually looking for the previous owner on a parole search, so it really had nothing to do with us. Just bad timing, really.
Really bad timing.
Really bad timing. And so I was riding down on a four-wheeler from digging holes up on the hill and came across the sheriffs all pointing guns at me. And so I ended up getting arrested eventually and going to jail for about 7 months.
7 months?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you came out?
I came out and kind of went through the whole probation thing, but I also had kind of this piece where like, oh my God, I just got caught, but it was such a fluke and I'm going to do it much smarter next time.
Much smarter.
And so I moved up to Humboldt and started growing up in Humboldt and buying properties and just got my cultivation larger and larger and started hiring a bunch of different people and friends and we started growing outdoors and then eventually we built a really gigantic indoor out in the middle of nowhere. You had to get through 3 gates to get to it, all ran by a generator. It was about 250 lights and everything was going great. It was top of the world at the moment. We were actually even selling some weed down to Dennis Perone down in San Francisco.
Oh my God!
Because one day I heard him on a interview saying, "We just can't get enough weed," and I was just like, "Oh my God, I can fix that."
We got a solution for this problem.
So that was a big operation.
Yeah.
How long did that go for?
Went for about 3 years.
Tell us the climax of this story then.
Yeah, the climax was one day, one of my guys that was working with me came back to my house. It was out in the same area of the property and said that there was 3 guys walking on the road. So I drove down the road and looking for them, couldn't find them. They weren't there. And so kept searching. We all started looking for them. We finally came across these 3 guys. They're all in plain clothes and I tried to give them a ride back to their car. They said they were cutting firewood and had a permit, and and it was in their car. So I'm, let's go back to your car. And I ended up walking these 3 guys out to the property through all the gates, and it kind of got confrontational because I kept asking them for their permit because we get back and I can't find their car, and eventually they pull out these little necklaces and a gun, and it was U.S. Marshals, it said. It was a DEA. And I ended up running. I just took off the side of the hill, ran through the woods, and got back to where my wife and newborn was in the house, got them in the car and got them off the hill. And then went back ran through the woods, through the property, got back to all the workers and got them out of all the buildings and had them go down through the woods to get out of there. And then basically went back to town and just knew that, something really terrible was going to happen, that it was going to be a big raid. And I had about 12,500 plants growing, 250 lines. So
you ran for a long time, right?
So yeah, went down to see an attorney, and he basically told me what I was facing, which was, 25, 30 years in prison. That's what the feds were putting people in prison for at that time. And I had a newborn child, wife, and I just decided that it wasn't worth it to fight it at this time. That I've been around the plant. I've seen that it wasn't really harmful for people. It even bettered people's lives in so many ways, and it just wasn't worth it because the feds haven't got this figured out right now to be that person sitting in jail for that long until they figure it out, and thinking that things were going to change over time.
I just want to say to listeners right now, there's a happy ending to this story, so don't give up, okay? So you ran for a long time.
Yes.
And where'd you go? Did you go out of the country? Did you stay in the country? What happened?
I kind of went south to Sonoma County for a little bit, stayed with some friends that weren't really connected to me, just trying to figure things out and kind of gather myself. And at one point, I was looking at Canada, so I bought a motor home and loaded my family up, found another family that had similar age kid and similar things, and paid them money to use their to get a passport in their name, and headed for Canada. But I get to Canada and I'm in a motorhome, a younger kid, but my passport doesn't actually match my wife's or daughter's passport. So it raised some red flags. They start looking into it. They tear the motorhome apart. And I find out that my passport, the guy had an arrest at a concert for some weed one time, and Canada doesn't really let you in if you have some sort of an offense like that. So after a real stressful couple hours of them interrogating me, they put a big red rejected stamp on my entry form and turned me around, sent me back to the U.S.
Luckily.
I was just as happy as could be to come back right then. Yes.
I'll bet you were. But eventually, the run stopped.
Yeah, so it was 6.5 years, it was 4.5 years that I was on the run, and I had a place up in Grass Valley, Nevada City area, and a friend that I had helped but got in trouble decided that it was better to tell them about me than go to jail. So he told them where I was, and so they basically came in and arrested me in Nevada City and took me to jail. So I had to go to court over
What's that moment like when you realize, okay, it's over?
It was heartbreaking, because there's the unknown. You don't know how long you're going to go to jail for. It could be the 20, 30 years. Everything's up in the air, and your whole life, just, your family, everything. It was just, it was crushing and stressful, and I'm just trying to hold it all together.
Yeah, I'll bet. So jail was minimum security, maximum security?
No, it was a medium security federal prison.
And this was 2002 that it all came to a head, as it were.
Yeah, it was 2002.
Are jails full of other people in for possession and for drug offenses?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, a lot of cocaine offenses, and mine was a lot of cannabis. That was a big grow operation, right? And it probably was a lot of money and things like that involved in it. One thing I did notice in prison was there were some guys in there on some cocaine offenses and things like that, where literally it was $1,000 worth of cocaine, and they were doing 7-10 years, and really, really sad seeing some of the people in there. A lot of times they were, in other cases, pretty good people.
When you were in jail, did you think, that's it, I'm done with cannabis? This is just too much for a plant?
Yeah, in a way, but there was another part of me that just felt wronged. I still had every experience I've had with cannabis, other than getting arrested, was fairly positive. I definitely had friends where I felt like maybe they're just using too much and they're not very motivated. But literally that was the problem. There's no motivation, lack of motivation. But just seeing other types didn't earn that piece where they just treat it as such a negative thing in our society where they're going to lock people up for it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's get to the happy part of the story. So jail's over. Dennis comes out.
Yeah.
So what does Dennis decide to do with his life?
I mean, the first thing I did was I started an eBay store, which was just kind of a funny little deal. But that didn't really pan out. And so I was like, what do I know? I know how to grow weed, and I know everything that you know about growing weed. And so I decided to start making products for cultivation. So I thought, you know what? I'm selling shovels now instead of growing. I can't grow anymore because I'm on probation, but I know what they need, aerated pots, trellis netting, my own brand of turkey bags and all
really,
the
you were doing the
things.
Levi Strauss thing,
Yeah,
huh?
so I started to do the Levi Strauss thing and basically sell shovels to the growers. And so I started a company. I made some different products. One, geopots. Another one was Terpinator, which creates more terpenes for the plants. And another one was our turkey bags and had a few other ones, grow tents, and became basically a distributor for the hydroponic industry.
Interesting. And so when was that?
That would have been probably 2009, 2010.
So today you run a very different sort of company.
Yeah, well, once I got off federal probation, I was so enthralled and had so much time to think about the cannabis industry. I could see where it was going, and I could see that it was going to go to more formulated products that from an extract of the cannabis plant, where you could really tell what the active ingredient was going to be in the products. That having that brownie that, one time you eat it and doesn't do anything, and the next time you eat it, you're stuck on the couch watching Home Shopping Network for a day and a half. There was a problem there that people really needed to know what the dosage was and find the dose that they could use. And so I seen that extracts were going to be kind of the next big thing in the industry.
And you began extracting oils? Is that what you started doing?
Yeah, so Mike, the co-founder of Cannacraft, Ned Fussell, he was a customer of mine for the Left Coast Garden Wholesale, our distribution company, buying a lot of grow supplies from me, and we became really good friends. And I kind of talked to him about the idea of getting an extractor, and so we decided to go in and buy an extraction machine together. And
you started then this company called Cannacraft.
Yeah, we started Cannacraft from there, and we learned a lot about extraction. I was really into it, so I was just diving in, trying to figure out every part of the extraction machine and why it was doing what it was doing. And eventually, we even started our own extraction machine company called Critical Solutions.
Were you guys doing? I'm sorry.
I read that you guys actually skipped over the solvent extraction thing and went straight to carbon dioxide extraction, CO2 injection.
Yeah, supercritical CO2 extraction.
This was early days for that, wasn't it?
It was. Well, I remember hearing about it from people,
is, right?
And it was kind of the unicorn out there. Like, I've heard about it. I've never been able to see one yet. And so when I finally found one, we ended up buying one and really learning the process. Then we started making them ourselves.
So the first product you started releasing, was that Care by Design product?
It was, we did Care by Design and Absolute Extracts pretty close together. I think it was Absolute Extracts' first one that really launched, because we spent a lot of time thinking about Care by Design and how we really wanted to create that product, because we felt that it was important to have a product that people could basically start from at an 18-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC and work their way up the ratios and find what really worked for them. Because I found that so much of this is this one size fits all, and that's just not how cannabis works.
But for those people who are not in California or the left coasts, explain to them what Care by Design is and what it does, please.
Yeah, so Care by Design is a product line that's basically different ratios of of CBD and THC. CBD is kind of the non-psychoactive component to the cannabis plant, but has tremendous medicinal benefits. And THC is the psychoactive part that will give you that real shift in your headspace and give you that psychoactive effect. And so basically by getting different ratios of those, you can really have a really great medicinal values and really find things that work for different, for epilepsy or rheumatoid arthritis. And you can really find the ratio that works well, but doesn't put you in an uncomfortable state.
What pushed you in that direction? Most of the recreational market is like, bam, hit them with as much as you can. Get that Everclear stuff going. They're not producing fine wines. Let's put it that way, okay? You're producing a much more subtle product. Why? Why'd you go there?
I just think because so many people, it was missing so much of the population that really could benefit from the plant, because if it was just such high THC and somebody who smokes all day long every day, they want such high THC that if someone who's just trying the product, they're just going to be totally overwhelmed. They're going to get themselves in an uncomfortable state. They're not going to be happy. It's not going to do anything good for them. And so I just seen so much of that happen with people, and then they don't use cannabis. But seeing it work for so many other people, I just thought that you really needed to make it easy for the consumer to get into a product, find what works for them without getting to that uncomfortable state and having a bad experience.
So when I was last in California, your PR guy, Jim Walsh, handed me another product that you guys created called Satori Chocolates. And Matthew and I have been experimenting with Satori Chocolates for many months now, and we really like them a lot. So talk to us about that. Tell us how you define a Satori chocolate, because I think it's quite a clever thing.
Yeah, Satori Chocolates is really going after a microdosed edible. So that you can basically, it's sort of like, I kind of like it as thinking of as your glass of wine at the end of the day to take the edge off, where you can just take a couple bites of the chocolate and just take the edge off. And if you want a few more, you're able to just microdose and take a few more, and you can still find the milligrams that work for you of the active ingredient, THC.
So what I also thought interesting, though, is that different milligrams of THC have different sizes, come in different sizes, and they also have different insides, fillers. Like a 3 milligram has a strawberry. What's a blueberry? 2 milligrams?
2 milligrams, yeah.
What's an almond?
I think it's
1? I can't remember.
Maybe 6 or 5.
And how high up do you go? Like, do you go to 10?
There's a 10 milligram. It's a cacao bean.
Cacao bean, okay. But that I thought was a very obvious solution to a problem that exists. Like, you never know. Every other little candy is all the same size, and there's no way to know. What possessed you?
I really wanted just a variety of choices for people to have, and some of them is part of what they enjoy is the center. The other is the size of it and the dosage. And so there's just more of a variety for people to choose from. It wasn't that cacao is just for somebody who wants 10 milligrams. It was also just about what people enjoy. And some people just love strawberries, and they might be at a 10 milligram dose that they like, so they'll take 3 of them. Mm-hmm.
But did you choose to make the size different so people knew what they were actually putting in their mouth?
No, it wasn't so much for the milligrams. It was really for just a preference for them.
Well, this is something that, and Joe, I know you and I have talked about this a lot. It's a mentality shift with the edible market, coming out of prohibition for such a long time. I've never walked into like a bodega and bought a bag of M&Ms and then took out from there 1 M&M and ate it, and then wait till the next day to do that again. And to see a product that is, designed to be where you can have multiple and still be okay and not be that guy locked into the couch for a day, is a movement that we've been championing on the show for a long time, but then also just seems to make so much sense. You get a 250 milligram chocolate bar. Who eats a square centimeter of a chocolate bar?
Yeah. And it's exactly why we did it. Because even for myself, I'm not a big edible eater where I can do really high dosages. But I love having just a few to just get a nice shift or a nice relaxed feeling, or and I think there's a lot of people out there that enjoy that, and I think there's other people that really like high dosages, and I think there's a lot of choices for those people already, and I think ours is just really giving other people a choice to enjoy cannabis in just a little bit different way.
So one of the big problems with this, I think, is that if you're in a dispensary, bud tenders tend to use a lot of cannabis. They have a high tolerance. And these low-dose products don't create much of an effect in them at all. Do you get a lot of resistance from dispensary workers saying, these aren't really, we don't feel anything, we don't want to sell these.
Yeah.
They don't work.
Yeah, I think when we first launched it, we did. We got some resistance from the dispensary owners and the dispensary workers that were in there, the buyers and things like that, for that reason. But we got so much great response just because of how great they taste, and their customers started requesting them, and then they started selling them really well, and then the other dispensaries started seeing them sell at their competitors, and so it's really taken off from there.
I wonder how much of it too, you may or may not even be able to speak to this, I don't know, but I wonder how much of it just comes from the fact that everyone is overusing. If you are if you're buying from the guy on the street and you're going home and you're packing a bowl, it's really difficult to understand the amount of the dose that you're getting just from smoking that spliff or packing a bowl up. And if that's all you've had your entire life, you're just acclimated to that, or you don't know anything different. So it might actually be that these bud tenders who've just been blasted out of their minds day after day need to take a couple days off and then start with a microdose, and they might have a completely unique experience that they never even knew that they were skipping over.
Apparently it's 3 to 5 days and the receptors are cleansed again. We've learned this already. We know this. So...
And if you're using a lot, your tolerance goes up very quickly.
Very expensive habit suddenly.
We've seen it with even like kids with epilepsy and stuff where they do need higher dosages. And we've seen them start giving them certain dosages. It might be that 5 milligrams and then going to a 10, and it may be that 20 milligrams is what's going to really stop a seizure from happening, and they get there literally within 7 days, and without getting where they're drooling all over themselves, and they're not able to function. And so it's something I've seen, and it's amazing. I was just like blown away that they got to a spout where now they're running around and they're able to play with kids, and they're just being totally normal human beings again. But it was that quick for the tolerance to go up, and I think that's probably what's happened is people's have just when they use heavily, their tolerance goes up very quickly.
So let's take a moment to look back. You now run a pretty successful company, I would say, right?
Yeah.
2 major brands at least, right? 3 major brands with Satori, right? Absolute Extracts, Care by Design, and Satori. Mm-hmm. It was a long road to get there, man.
Yeah, it was definitely a long road to get there. And
but how do you look back on? How do you make all this make sense to yourself?
I don't know. Maybe things are sweeter when you have to work for them that hard, and you have to go through, some pains and some really hard times to get there. It just means more to you when you achieve it. But just watching go full circle, I've been thinking we were going to get to legalization, so many times over the years, and to see that things are really moving in that direction, even nationally, is amazing. And so. I'm just actually feel privileged to be in the role that I'm in now, because I feel like, our company and myself and my situation is really being able to play a part in how things develop and how they roll out.
Does your company play a part? Do you go to Sacramento? Do you talk to lawmakers? Do you support criminal justice reform? Tell me what you do.
Yeah, so we had one more little hiccup about 2 years ago, where we were deciding to really come in full compliance, and we went into a state-of-the-art facility that looked like a pharmaceutical facility, set up shop, started extracting, making all of our products, and we invited lawmakers. We're just trying to figure out how to start regulating, and so they wanted to visit some facilities and see, and so we invited them to come visit our facility. So we had about 50 to 55 different lawmakers from Sacramento roll into our facility. They came in buses, and we toured them through. We showed them how we made everything. We showed them how we extracted. We showed them how we deliver stuff and the documentation we use. And then we had about 3 weeks after that, we had a disgruntled employee went to the local police department and made some comments about kind of false comments about how we were extracting, and the police didn't really know about the whole state lawmakers piece. We were working with local politicians. We were working with city council and plan development and all these other agencies, but the police didn't really know about us that much, and so they came in and did a huge raid on our facility with over 100 agents.
This was in 2016, right?
Yeah. And so they took me to jail again. So one more time. Arrested me at my house. They raided that facility. They raided the hydroponic distribution company, and just took everything, cleaned us out. But the community just totally got behind me and the company, and they came out and they just pushed back. It was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back for the industry. And so they went to the jail and the courthouse and protested with just hundreds of people. And the newspapers also and different media just kind of came out and said, hey, enough is enough. They had seen how much compliance we did in our products and how we were making them and different things, and they were just like, hey, we're already moving in this direction. If this company's doing it wrong, then everybody's doing it wrong. And it was just a pushback. And so they let me out of jail. They didn't charge me.
Did you get all your stuff back?
We just got all of our stuff back.
You did?
Just took all.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was just recently. But what happened was the city got behind us as well. The city council, they moved up their path for getting licensing, but the city, and they licensed us. And then there was still this thing where manufacturing was in this gray area because it's a Schedule I substance. And so it falls under almost like having a meth lab when you extract it. And so the state had kind of recognized cultivation as, you can grow this many plants and you can do this. And they noticed how many retails you could have and how you could do that. But what they didn't really talk about was manufacturing. And so there was nothing in there.
Right.
Yeah, so we went to Sacramento. We took our products in there. I met with probably 8 or 10 assembly members and 5 or 6 senators, and we did a Sacramento day. And we went in and said, we make it. This is how we can tell how many milligrams are in these products. This is the process through CO2. It's safe, and it's all these different pieces. And all of them were just like, that makes total sense. This isn't legal. They just didn't know. They're like, they were totally
They had no idea.
Clueless.
The lawmakers didn't know what was legal.
Some of them asked me that we'd like to see a machine, and I'll bring one up here. And so about 2 weeks later, I rented out the little restaurant on the corner at the Capitol, the little patio, and brought a machine up there, and they brought all their staffers and everything, and they came through. We showed them how the machine worked, and right at the state capitol. And then one of the assembly members had a bill that he gutted, put the language in there for manufacturing cannabis. We got it passed with like record numbers, almost unanimous through the assembly and the Senate, and the governor signed it, and we changed the law.
Amazing.
Great. That's a great end to the story. I told you it was going to have a happy ending.
I mean, I want to know how you feel now that it's rolled over to complete legality. Like everything that you went through, if it started over today, you wouldn't have dealt with any of that.
Yeah, I fought for legalization, as an activist for a long time, and it's here. It's not quite ruling out like I would hope sometimes, but it's a huge step in the right direction. A lot of people aren't going to jail for it anymore, and we got to be happy about that. The regulations, there's still problems with it. It's going to take years to kind of iron out all the issues and things like that. And there's some parts of it that we're going to lose a lot of the people in the industry just because the regulations don't really support kind of that small grower, small producer. It's kind of, you're starting to see a lot of consolidation and things like that. So those are things that I kind of like wish we could change quicker before we lose a lot of those great people that were in the industry. But it's a huge step forward for cannabis.
And if your story is any evidence of that, they'll be back. I mean, they may be gone for a little while, but they'll be back.
One should hope.
You know, one thing, they'll be back, but you also got to look at even the law enforcement end of it. You know, they were told this is illegal. You got to go do this. You got to go bust these people. And a lot of times I'll try to put it in another perspective because end of the day, I think having cannabis be illegal or having it be a Schedule I drug has actually distanced us from law enforcement. I mean, they're really there to help us and protect us. And because they've really gone after this drug and such a huge population uses cannabis, we're all kind of fearful of having law enforcement. I know when I walk down the street and I see a cop, of course, my situation might be a little bit different, but a lot of users are like, oh God, I got a joint in my pocket or whatever, and they kind of shy away from police. And so I think they were really put in a bad position, and if we could change that at some point, you know, it'd be great to have them back to, you know, being peace officers, really being part of the community and supporting the community and protecting it.
Has there been any talk, or have you done any looking into going back and having like your record expunged and having these things removed?
Yeah, I just we talked to the governor in California, and he's looking at expunging my record in California, but I have federal charges as well. Sure. And so, you know, it might be a bit before that's going to happen, but it'd be great to have that happen someday in the future.
Well, it may not actually be that far away.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was really great to have you.
It's great being here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. You know, we're growing, and we're growing quickly. And one of the ways we're growing is when people share our podcast with people they think might be interested in it. So we want to encourage you to hit that share button and send an episode to somebody you think will find it of interest. Thank you for joining us this week, folks. Tune in again next week, and don't forget to support us on Patreon.
Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @bravenewweed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.